I know living paycheck to paycheck is really difficult, so hopefully these tips that I share with you are helpful and you can climb your way out of this. What I mean by paycheck to paycheck is that when you get paid, you basically spend all of your money by the next time that you get paid, or you go into even further debt. So if you're going into further debt, that may not mean that you are behind on bills, but there are people who are straight paycheck to paycheck. There are people who are paycheck to paycheck and going further into debt. And then there are people who are both of those, but also behind on several bills. So we're gonna touch all three of those, and I'm gonna offer some tips for everybody in all three of those. Ideally, to stop living paycheck to paycheck, you would have an emergency fund or a situation where you are not continuing to go into debt. In order to live your life, your necessities, and your current living situation, you would not go into further debt and you would be caught up on your bills. So that is what I'm considering paycheck to paycheck here, just to be clear. I did want to share my story because there was a point in time where I was living paycheck to paycheck. As you guys know, I kind of live paycheck to paycheck. Things are kind of changing with that. I will update you at the end of January when I give you an update on my budget. But for me, I do live paycheck to paycheck. However, I am not considered paycheck to paycheck because I have an emergency savings, I have sinking funds, I contribute to a Roth IRA, things like that. There is money that if I absolutely needed it, I can use it. So I do not consider myself paycheck to paycheck. For the most part, I spend all of my paycheck on the things that I have to pay through the month, but I am not going into further debt or anything like that. However, there was a time that I was in debt and I was living paycheck to paycheck and going into further debt every single month. And this was in 2017. 2017 was easily my worst year in many areas, but I had graduated college. I got my master's in 2016. I was working at a job making, I think, almost $13. I was down to only working 1 day a week. So as you can imagine, this was a really difficult time for me because this was also a time when I had to start paying back my student loans. At the time, me and my sister lived in a house together. We bought the house together, and for several months I was unable to pay my portion of that. I also was charging any purchases that I needed to for groceries. I was just making the minimum payments on all of my credit card debt at the moment, and obviously going into further debt because of those things. At the time, I had my student loan payment, I was leasing a car, I couldn't pay my sister, so I was obviously owing money to her for several months. I could not pay my credit cards off, so I was going into further debt, and that is where a lot of my debt started to come into play. And at this time, like I said, I was only working 1 day a week at a job making like $12.75 an hour. I also had a health issue at the time, so this was costing me extra money. It was just a really rough time financially. I was applying to tons of jobs in my field of study and just kept getting rejections. I know I had an interview and I did not get that job, and then I finally did get a job with a little bit higher of a pay and also with better hours. So I was working full-time every week. This is kind of when I started to climb out of that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, but barely. I was able to save like 20 bucks, 10 bucks here and there, but it was very difficult. And I remember that first week that I was working, I obviously didn't get paid right away. It took a couple of weeks to get my first paycheck, and my bank account overdraft. And I still have the receipt from that day. And I remember taking just any cash that I had and putting it in the ATM, and I was still in the negatives. And I will never forget that, and I will never be at that point again. I do know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck, and even worse than that. So I am grateful to say that, of course, I was safe living in a home. I could get food, I had clothes and all of that, but it is really stressful, and it's kind of something that you feel like you're going through alone because you're embarrassed by it and you don't want to tell people and you're just trying to make it. But I totally understand, and hopefully these tips will help you, and this is kind of how I turned it around for myself. One thing I did want to touch on, and I know this, you may not want to hear this right now, but your money mindset is really important. Just get into check with what you are thinking about money, how you were raised to think about money. Were you told that money is evil, or were you told that it's bad to hate money? Because oftentimes people who think those things have money problems forever. And you have to get to a point where you have a good relationship with money and you love money and you want money. And this doesn't have to be in a greedy way. You can just want to have money because that is okay. And so really pay attention to what you're thinking about the money. Try not to dwell on the negatives of it and keep staying in this negative state of this is never going to get better, or this is so difficult, or I'm never going to have money, because that's not true. And starting today, you can start to take steps to turn that around. Just start working on your mindset and your thoughts as well. It's going to take a lot of work, but it's worth it, trust me. The first step is to become completely aware of where you stand financially. The first part of that is to determine your income. Figure out exactly what you are making every single month. If you have a different schedule each week, then kind of get an average and figure out exactly what you're making for the month, for the week, for the year, and keep that number, write it down, and we're going to use that later. The second part of getting familiar with your finances is determining your debt, if you have debt, of course, but a lot of people who live paycheck to paycheck do have debt. So there are so many parts that go along with having debt. So you want to know, who do you owe? How much do you owe? What do you owe on? The interest rate of every single loan, the minimum payment of every single loan, and the due date of every single loan. And don't just do a guesstimate. Get actual numbers. Write these down. Every single loan that you have, every single website. You're going to want to get familiar with all of your lenders' websites. Make sure you know your login information and save that somewhere, write it down, put it in your phone, and be consistent with checking your bank account from now on. Check your bank account, check your savings account, check all of your debt accounts. I check my bank account just about every single day. I also log in to my lender's accounts multiple times in the month, because it's important for you to stay on top of things. You can catch things if anything goes wrong. You can really be focused on your debt and on your finances. You're paying them attention. It's like a relationship. You want to give these things attention, and you are going to help the relationship by doing that. You can't just keep ignoring this, because that's not going to help the situation at all. You're just going to keep making it worse for yourself. If you do have debt, the goal here is to not keep going into further debt. That is one of the most important things. So if you can, stop going into debt. Stop going into further debt. Now, if you are someone who is behind on their bills, this is also a different situation than somebody who is just going into further debt. So if you are living paycheck to paycheck, but also going into further debt, and you are behind on bills, there are a few things that you're going to want to do. Again, same thing, money mindset. Become aware of everything, write everything down, lay it all out in front of you. And then we're going to start making a plan. To be honest, I have never missed a payment, so I am not familiar with that. However, I have done research on this, and I know there are things that you can do if you are behind on your bills. The first thing is you're gonna wanna make sure you have your necessities in line. So this would be your home, your electricity, your water, your food, and you have clothes on your back. So there's just a few necessities that you absolutely need, and you should be good. Make sure you are caught up on those. You don't want your electricity to go out. You don't want to lose water. You don't want to starve. You don't want to be evicted. So get those in check first. If you can't make a payment on your credit cards, don't worry about it. If you can't make a payment on your student loans, don't worry about it. If you absolutely cannot, then don't worry about it. The next thing I suggest is for you to call your creditors. If you are behind on payments, they're probably not gonna be very excited to talk to you. They may not even be very friendly to you. However, try really hard to be really friendly and just speak calmly and explain your situation. You can see if they can, one, lower your interest rate, if they have any sort of other plan that you could look into. See if there are any fees that you can get removed, like your late fees or anything like that. and just be really kind and explain your situation. Don't lie or anything. Just let them know that you are trying, and even ask them to put a note on your account or something that you are about to make this payment, or that you can pay this much today and this is what I can give you today. I do suggest having a good relationship with your creditors if you are behind on bills, because they can help you out. You never know. It's worth a shot to at least try. You don't have to answer their calls if they're bothering you, but I would give them a call and just let them know where you stand right now and what your plan of action is, and just see if they have anything to offer. Another thing I have heard of, and I don't know if this will always work, but I do think it will, is if you have any medical bills or anything, maybe you filed bankruptcy and you owe money on a car, and say it's $5,000. What you can do is within a few months, or within, whatever amount of time after the next video, you'll also have some tips on how you can increase your income. Do your best to save a couple of $1,000s or a few $1,000s. And so for this $5,000 example, you have a $5,000 bill that you have not paid in months. And then you call this company and tell them, I have $3,000 cash that I can give to you today. And this is, several months down the road. And you see if you can get that $5,000 cleared for $3,000 cash paid in full. The only thing is, if this does work, make sure you get it in writing and make sure it is said very clearly that you have completely paid off the $5,000, that this wasn't quote unquote even exchange. I have never done this, of course, but do some research on it. It's worth a shot. And if it doesn't work, at least you'll have the couple of thousand or a few $1,000s saved up, and you can put that toward your debt or savings in general. Another tip is to see if you qualify for a discount. I know in 2017, I think I got a really bad sore throat or something for a couple of months. And so I went to an ear, nose, throat specialist, and I had to pay like 200 something at the visit. It was very stupid of me to even go there. But then they billed me later for several $100s, which I did not have in 2017, as I said. And so I was making a low enough income to qualify for poverty. And so I had this few $100 bill, and I qualified for a 90% discount. So I ended up only having to pay, I can't remember, but it was under 100. And this was a huge relief for me. And all I had to do, I called them. I told them, I cannot pay this. Is there anything that I can do? And they said, yes, if you go to this website or if you email this, whatever, I can't remember, then there is a form you can fill out, and then you submit it to us and go from there. I remember that it was very easy to fill out. I just had to fill in my income information, and then a couple of weeks later, I got the discount. That's all I had to pay. It had a different due date, and I was good to go. In part 2 of this video, how to stop living paycheck to paycheck, I will share with you how you can increase your income and where you can save. And that will help you to really get out of the paycheck to paycheck cycle, or worse than the paycheck to paycheck cycle. If that video is already up, I will link it down below. If not, right now, just continue to educate yourself on finances. Read everything that you can that is free out there for educating yourself, and listen to podcasts, watch YouTube videos, read other people's stories, and just focus on the positive here. Do these couple of things and get really clear about where you stand on your finances, and just know that this is your rock bottom, and the only way you can go is up. And that is what constantly kept me motivated. I knew that that was my lowest point, and that the only way to go was now up. I couldn't keep going down. There was, of course you could keep going down, but we're not going to focus on that. We are just going to go up, even if it's little by little. Progress is still progress. So stay tuned for part 2 of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.